So we have to start. We need 2 books today. And these books are only 23 pages. And then the rest is commentary. It's a lot of commentary, no?
Yeah.
So we start on top of 23A. Yesterday we learned Machlokes between the sages and Rabbi Yehuda regarding if the same type is batal. 2 things of the same type, if it gets nullified. So the source of this was the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat, that they're mixed together. The Torah says you should take from the blood of the bull and you should take from the blood of the goat. Now everyone knows that the bull has more blood than the goat. It should have been nullified. So the sages say that this proves to us that 2 things that get offered on the altar don't nullify each other. However, it doesn't prove to us that 2 things that are exactly the same don't nullify each other. It's the position that they take is that what the verses are referring to is the sanctity of it. That's why it's not nullified. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, says it doesn't have to do with the fact that they're both offered on the altar. What it has to do with is that they're both blood. And anything that's the same will never be nullified, regardless of the altar saying kosher, not kosher, all of those. If it's the same, it's never nullified. So the ramifications of that would be that if I would have, let's say, kosher meat and non-kosher meat, that get mixed up according to Rabbi Yehuda, they won't be nullified because the kosher meat is the same as the non-kosher meat. According to the sages, the difference would be 1 second, one's kosher, one's non-kosher. Of course, they can be nullified. They're not the same quality spiritually. Okay. So Itmar was stated. It's 3 lines from the top. Menachos Daf. The scoop that's taken from a Menachos Daf, that's a person that committed a sin. He can't afford to bring the regular sacrifice, so he brings the meal offering, Sheshamnai, that he added oil to his kaimetz. Now, the Menachos Daf doesn't get oil. He didn't add oil to the mincha. He only added it to the kaimetz, to the scoop, which is not the rest of the mincha that gets eaten. He didn't add it to the main part. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Pasal. Rabbi Yochanan says, okay, you invalidated it, you added oil. Rish Lakish Amar, Hu Atzmei Mishachshechei B'Shirei Halogim Aleo. Not only is it not invalid, but he was actually supposed to add oil onto the kaimetz from the remnants of another mincha. In other words, whenever you empty a bottle, there's always a few drops left. So you would take it from those few drops that are left in some other mincha and add it to this kaimetz. The Gemara asks, it says, don't put on oil on this sacrifice, don't put on frankincense. It says, no, that just means that you don't add oil, you don't establish it with oil. That means initially add oil, and like the other menachos. Tosfos asks, so what's going on over here? You have another mincha that you're taking it from its oil and using it for this mincha. Then we have a rule that if you don't use all the oil, if a mincha is missing oil, it's pasul, chisur shamna, lacking oil, too much oil. We had all of these rules. So Tosfos responds, that the Torah wasn't given to angels, and it's impossible to get every last drop, and you're able to get it for this. So even though we've always been talking about like exact measurements and needs to be exact, but there is a little bit of error, margin of error. So Rabbi Yochanan, his opinion was that you cannot have any oil on the kaimetz. So Rabbi Yochanan asks Rish Lakish a question. The term esvei, the root of it is tough yud beis, is tough vav beis sometimes, which is to retort. or to return. And in Hebrew it would be shuv. In Aramaic it's tuv, because the taf and the shin are interchangeable. Whenever it says eisvei, we always know who's asking and who's the one that's being asked. We find similar type of this is a way of introducing a question, but we find similar ones where we don't know who's asking. Meisvei, we don't know. We don't know who's being asked. We have another term that's we know who's asking, we don't know who's being asked. It's masiv, but it's all the same root. So, okay. So, Eisvei Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yechon asked Rish Lakish the following question: Cherev means a dry mincha. Shenesarav bebal that gets mixed up with a wet mincha. Yaakov, you can still bring it. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer lo Yaakov. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't bring it. Now, what's the reason for the sages? They say Cherev shenesarav bebal, the first opinion. They say that you could bring it. I guess they're both, Rashi says, they're both sacrifices. Must be both kaimets. There must be two scoops here. One is dry and one's wet. And because they're both brought on the altar, so they're considered the same quality, and they don't nullify each other. So you can bring them up. But Rabbi Yehuda says you can't bring it. Now why would Rabbi Yehuda say you can't bring it? Says, I guess because it's a different, one has oil, and that's a different type. Rabbi Yehuda looks at the matter. My love, what are we dealing with? It must be, my love is actually, is it not? It must be the scoop of the sin offering mincha, which is dry, the yarif minchas nedava, that gets mixed up with the scoop of a donation offering, that has oil. And this would be a proof that even though it's getting wet, Rabbi Yehuda would hold that it's invalid. So therefore, what about according to the sages? Who's he asking? According to the rabbis or according to the sages? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's very clear why he has a good question here. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we're seeing that it's not allowed to get wet. It's so much that it's not allowed to get wet that you don't even bring it. It becomes puzzle. However, that's not a good enough question because you could say I don't go like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rashi says that even according to the rabbis, there's a problem. Why do the rabbis say that you could bring it? Because it's not nullified. They say that it's not nullified, and that's why you could bring it. Why? Because each one is still here in its entirety. So let's say there's oil on the dry kaimets. So I'll say, well, that's not a problem. That's not doing anything to that. They don't nullify each other. That's oil is part of the other kaimets. They don't get nullified. They don't like interact. Each one is there in its entirety. However, according to the rabbis, what would happen if I took oil and I added it to the dry kaimets without another wet kaimets there? Then, according to them, it would be, 1 second, why is there oil on this? I don't have another kaimets there. So that would be a question on Rish Lakish that says, oh, you just add oil to it. The whole reason here why it's valid, according to the rabbis, is because you have two kaimets, and each one is whole. But if you would have a dry kaimetz that gets wet, in any other case where you don't have a wet kaimetz there, that would be invalid. Okay, so the Gemara said, this is a question on Rish Lakish that says that you are allowed to use a wet kaimetz with oil. And the Gemara says, good morning, Loi, that's not what we're talking about. Actually, what we're talking about is something, this is very interesting. We're talking about minchas parim ve'elim b'minchas kvasim. Whenever you bring a sacrifice, you have to bring flour, oil, and wine together with it. We're on 23a. So the how much flour, how much oil in wine is dependent on what the size of the animal is. So, for example, a sheep gets 1/10 of an ephah of flour, and which is equivalent to 53 eggs or something, 43 eggs.
That's a lot of eggs.
Volume. And 43 eggs. And a fifth. 43 and a fifth. And gets 3 lug. I don't know how big the lug is, of oil. So it's 3-to-1. It's the ratio. A bull is 3/10 of an ephah, right? That'd be 129 or something, egg size, whatever. 3/10 of an ephah, and 3 lug. So it's really 1-to-1. No, I'm sorry, and 6 lug. And 6 lug. So it's 2-to-1. 2-to-1. And the same with the ram. The ram is also a ratio of 2-to-1. The only thing is, a ram is 2/10 of an ephah and 4 lug. So it's the ratio is the same. It's just smaller. So here, the sheep is very, very moist because it has 3 lug for 1 isarin. That's 3-to-1. That's the ratio. Now the problem is that because I have these two types of kaimetz in the same pot, I'm not dealing with a dry one and a wet one. I'm dealing with 2 types of wet kaimetz. Why did we call it dry? He said, well, it's drier. That was the nickname we gave it. And why does Rabbi Yehuda say it's pasul? Because it's receiving more oil than it should have, and the other one is losing some of the oil. Why don't we say that each one is intact? Why don't we say that it's not nullified and each one is intact? I don't know. Whatever the case is, what we're saying is that if it would have been actually dry, then we would not have a problem bringing it up, even though it got wet, because it's allowed to get wet. Here, it's like more of a problem when it's supposed to be moist, but a certain type of ratio of moisture to flour, and now you're messing up that ratio. You're making it a thin mixture is becoming a thick mixture, and a thick mixture is becoming a thin mixture. That's a problem. Okay. The Gemara asks, that's what you want to say is the case of the Brisa? That you started talking about, the Brisa calls it a dry kaimetz with a wet one. And you come back and you tell me it's talking about 2 types of ratio of flour and oil that are getting mixed up. One's called a dry and one is called a wet. But we have a clear case in the Mishnah that discusses that one in the Brisa, that discusses that case. You can't say that the dry and the wet is that case repeated again. It says minchas parim ve'elim b'minchas kvasim. It says, let's say the meal offering of a bull and a ram get mixed up with the meal offering of a sheep, and then it goes on and it says v'cherev shenasar v'bala, and a dry one that gets mixed up with a wet one. So you see, it's 2 separate cases. So the cherev, the dry one that gets mixed up with the wet one, must be it's entirely dry. Now we're back to the case. If it's entirely dry, then how does Reish Lakish say that it's allowed to be wet, and the sages and Rabbi Yehuda would hold that if it would get wet, it would be invalid. And we have over there the case where the sages say yakriv, that you bring it over there because you have both a wet one and a dry one. But Rabbi Yehuda Imer la yakriv. The Gemara explains Perushei kamefarish. It's not two cases there. What the Gemara is doing, what the Bryce is doing there, is it's saying one case, and it's just elaborating on it. It's saying that it's a minchas parim with a minchas kvasim, the meal offering of a bull or a ram, together with is mixed with the meal offering of a sheep. And it's explaining that one is dry and one is wet. Which one is dry? The bull is dry because it's a ratio of 2-1, and the sheep is 3-1, so it's more wet. Okay, so we don't have a proof. Boy, Rava has a question. It's an interesting. Several ways of learning this Gemara. Rashi brings two of them. Let's say, this is one of the ways, that you do kmitza. You have the scoop, it has the flour and oil in your hand. As you're putting it on the fire, oil drips down onto the wood, gets absorbed into the wood, and then you put the rest of the kaimitz down. So mahu, what's the din? Chiburi oilin koilin damu. Is this considered that you've reattached the oil that dripped together with the kaimitz, because you put the kaimitz onto the block of wood that had the oil dripped on it? Or do you say that you didn't reattach it, and now you're left with a kaimitz that's missing oil? Because can you reattach it? It's interesting that the Gemara should ask this, because you remember we had a case where you were bringing up the size of a sesame seed, one after another, right? Remember we said that may be the way of offering. We had a case on the bottom of a page. And the question was, each time he thought about thinking, he thought about eating a slice of a sesame seed out of the allotted time. The question was, is that the way of offering it? Is it not? And then the Gemara here seems to ask, like, okay, you've already dripped a little bit of oil. That's already not part of this. So what do you mean? That's the way I put it on. It's got to drip when I put it on. But the Gemara has this question now: does it recombine to be the shear? That's one way of viewing this question. Rashi gives us another way, where his question is: if oil drips onto a piece of wood, am I required to take that wood and put it up on the altar? That's the other question. It's the same wording in the text. The Gemara didn't explain what it's asking. So is it asking? The first way is that will the kaimitz that I'm putting on the wood combine with the oil that dripped into it to recomplete the size of the kaimitz? Or do I say, or is the question that as I was bringing it up, some oil dropped on some wood, and I'm going to put it up, do I have to take that wood that the oil dropped on it and put it on? Okay, whatever the question is. Taisus has an opinion here. His opinion is that he goes with the first interpretation of Rashi. It's absorbed. You put the kaimitz on top. Does it combine? Amar lei Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, Lav haina de Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish. Is this not the discussion between Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish regarding something else? The Itmar, it was stated, Hamala Ever Shem Be Kazayas, Be'etzem Ashlim Le Kazayas. If someone offers a limb outside the temple, however, you don't have an olive size of meat on this limb. What do you have? You have part of an olive size, plus a bone, that if you count the bone would complete its size. So, Rabbi Yechanan Amar Chayev. Rabbi Yechanan says that that's good enough. The bone completes it. Rish Lakish Amar Pater. Rish Lakish says that it's exempt. That he's exempt because he was offering it outside the temple. Right. It wasn't a full amount because the bone doesn't complete it. So let's get the logic of this machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and maybe that will resolve Rava's question. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayev. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say chayev? Well, he holds chiburei oilen ka'oilen damo. That what gets attached to something that's offered on the altar is considered part of the offering. If that's the case, then what gets attached to the oil, I put the kaimitz on top of the oil, that would be part of the offering. It would be complete. Rish Lakish amar pater. Rish Lakish says he's exempt. Chiburei oilen lav ka'oilen damo. What gets attached to the offering is not considered the offering, and therefore the bone is not counted. So therefore, when you take the kaimitz and you put it on top of the oil, it doesn't get attached to the kaimitz that's on top, and it's missing. So the Gemara says, actually, no, because Tibayla Rabbi Yochanan v'Tibayla Rish Lakish. We're actually asking, according to each of them, we can still have our question here, because we can always say that what they said over there is different than here. And each one would still have this question. Why? Tibayla Rabbi Yochanan, we can ask according to Rabbi Yochanan, that Ad kan leikam Rabbi Yochanan hasamel be'etzem. Over there, Rabbi Yochanan says that it's considered attached. The bone is attached. The mina de basarhu, because it's the same type as the meat. Aval ha de lav mina de kaimetzu, but this is the oil. It's not the same type as the flour. Maybe it doesn't get attached, loy. And so that's why we have a good question here. Does it attach when you put the flour on top of this drop of oil that's in the wood? Or we can say the opposite. Afil Rish Lakish, we can ask. Like Afil Rish Lakish, like Amar, Rish Lakish only said that it does not attach. Ela be'etzem de bar mifreshu, the bone that sometimes it gets detached. V'i parish, and if it does get detached, lav mitzvah la'aduri, it's not a mitzvah to reattach it. That means to put it back on the altar. Let's say it gets detached. Let's say the bone gets detached from the meat. And then it falls off the altar. I don't have to return the bone, rather. I don't have to return the bone to the altar. Aval shemen the lav bar mifreshu. But shemen is not something that would normally get detached. It's not like the bone that would fall off the meat when it's getting roasted. And it would possibly fall off the altar. And the question is, do I have to put it back on? And the answer is that no, the bone you don't have to put back on. The oil is all one mixture. It's in the kaimitz. It doesn't get separated. So light. So I would say that over there it is considered attached because it's not normal for it to get detached. I don't view it as something separate. Maybe there's no difference. Anything that gets detached is considered detached. And then I would say that according to Rish Lakish that this doesn't count. Where it says we don't have a way of resolving this, so teiku. Teiku means you leave it. In the yeshivas, they said it's an acronym for Tishbi, Yitaretz, Kushis, V'ibayas. That Eily Navi, who's called Tishbi, will come and he will answer all the questions. And Kushis, V'ibayas are two types of questions: questions and inquiries. Okay, but I think the word means just it's left alone. Take it, leave it. Okay.
Oh, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Take out. Yeah.
It's cute.
Was it Teku? Teku.
Could be Tiku. I don't know. They have ways now of putting vowels into the new Gemaras. And it's computerized. Every once in a while, you come to a source where the Gemara says, like, don't read it like this, read it like that.
Right. And
the computer doesn't get that nuance, and it just puts it in the same. So it's not the...
They don't correct it? They don't catch it?
Someone's got to edit it, and it's... Even these fancy Gemaras are... there's mistakes in the... Not in the text, but in the commentary there's mistakes. They put it out quickly, but... Once you're reading this, you should hopefully be able to figure out if that's an obvious mistake. It says yes, and it meant...
Yeah, we should be able to do that.
It said yes, and it meant no.
Oh.
Okay. The Mishnah. Let's switch books now. finish this one. Okay. Shtei Menachos is interesting. This Mishnah, we don't have Rashi on it because Rashi put his commentary on the last page or two ago, when at the other Mishnah, Rashi explained the entire Mishnah back on that page, even though it's printed on this page. Over here, all Rashi says is I explained it above. So it's funny because in this Gemara you're stuck because it's in the wrong book. It's in a different book. Shtei Menachos le'nikpetzu. You have two menachos that you didn't do the kmitza on it, and v'nisarvu zubazu, and they got mixed up, they got put together somewhere. So, if you can still manage to get a scoop from each one, maybe you can tell by how long it's been sitting. Maybe you can see the different consistency or something, and you're able to scoop from each of them, then it's ksheris, and it's valid. Bimlav, but if you can't get a scoop out of them independently, then each one on its own, then it's going to be invalid, even if you take two scoops. Because what's going to happen is each kaimetz has a mixture of its own mincha plus the other mincha, and that's not valid. It's a statement from the Teres Kayanim that says that you will take a scoop from its flour and from its oil, and the Teres Kayanim says, Teres Kayanim is the medrash on Vayikra. We call it the Sifra, the book. Sifra means the book, and it's also called Teres Kayanim. On Bamidbar and Dvarim it's called Sifri, which is books, because it's on both of them. So, but in the Teres Kayanim, in the Sifra, it says misalta v'lo miselas chaverta, that you take from its flour and not from its friend's flour. That means that if you do a scoop on this mixture, it's not going to be valid. Here you have a kaimitz. You did the kaimitz, the kmitza. Now you have the scoop that's meant to go on the altar, and it gets mixed in with the mincha that was not performed. The kmitza wasn't performed on it yet. So the kaimitz needs to be burnt. The other mincha, you're not supposed to burn that. You're supposed to do the kmitza on it and burn the kmitza. But you have the whole thing there. So, lo yakter, you can't go and just ahead and burn the whole thing, because you're not allowed to put flour and oil on the altar if it's not commanded. And here it's not commanded because it's not even the remnants, it's the entire thing. The im hiktir, and if you do offer it up against the law, so zushi nikmitza oila lebailim, the one that kmitza was done, the kaimitz is valid for the owners. In other words, that they don't have to bring another one; it was accepted. The one that the kmitza was not done is not accepted for the owners. It's not considered that they offered up the mincha, even though they offered up the whole thing. So in that mixture is the kaimitz as well, but it doesn't count because it wasn't separated. It wasn't done. If the kaimitz gets mixed up with its own remnants or with the remnants of another mincha, la yakti, you can't offer it up. But if you did offer it up, it is considered offered up. We're going to be discussing here, does the kaimitz become nullified in what's left? That's the big deal. Here we're saying that when you offer up a mincha with some other kaimitz that's in it, even though you weren't supposed to do that, it was considered a valid offering. That means that it doesn't become nullified. Amar Rav Chizda, the following Gemara, what you're about to see, if you think about the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim regarding nullification, the sages looked at the quality of it. If it's both sacrifices, then they don't nullify each other. Notice, everyone holds that the same type does not get nullified. It strengthens it. The view of the sages is what's considered the same type. if it's both sacrifices, that's the same type. They don't really view if one is flour, one's oil, one's this. That wasn't the issue. The fact is, they're both sacrifices. They don't nullify each other. That's considered the same type. Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't really view if it's both sacrifice. That didn't matter. The question is if it's both the same material, the same substance, both blood, both oil. It doesn't. It won't nullify each other. Which, okay. The quality of it to Rabbi Yehuda didn't matter. What we're going to learn here is that in Rabbi Yehuda, the quality does matter. And how is the quality going to matter? Well, if the two things are able to, at one point, be the same type, quality-wise. In other words, right now, they're the same substance. But if we can also get them to be the same quality, so then that's considered the same type entirely. This is another opinion in Rabbi Yehuda, where we're going to see that it's not enough just to be the same substance. It also needs to have some connection to the quality as well. Let's see. Amar Rab Chisda. Nevela betela b'shchuta. Nevela is meat that was not slaughtered, and hence, if someone touches it, he becomes impure. If there are two slices of shechted meat, that does not make you impure, and you have one slice of nevela, which if you touch it, you would become impure.
Yeah.
And now you don't know which one is where. And so we say that the nevela is batal. The nevela becomes nullified. It's 2-1. The shchuta is 2 and the nevela is 1. It becomes nullified in the majority. Now the reason why we can say it's nullified, the problem is that they're both the same type. They're both the same substance, meat. Say, well, they don't have the same quality. One is nevela and one is shchuta. Now, because we look at the nullifier, not what's being nullified. And the nullifier, which is the slaughtered meat, the kosher meat, can never become nevela. It's already been slaughtered. It can't become nevela. So therefore, there are different qualities. It can never become what's being nullified. So it's a different quality, and therefore we view it as min b'she'ein mina, a different substance. It's the same substance, but we view it as a mixture of two different types. And so therefore, two different types, one can nullify the other. Let's say the opposite.